Hi there. Today I'm going to show you the easiest way possible to make a block for block printing. You can block print on paper or fabric. I'm pretty much talking about printing on fabric. The traditional way to print on fabric with a block, a carved block, is with old-fashioned linoleum. And most people, you wouldn't see this kind of linoleum now. You can buy it, as far as I'm aware, still for doing this particular technique. It's very hard. It's not the cushion floor we used to have in the 90s. It's even older than that. So this is a block I carved with that technique. The linoleum itself is just this little layer. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick. And when you're carving it, you need special tools. You go warm it up every once in a while to soften it. It's very difficult to carve, but it gives you a long-lasting surface. And to print with this, it's got a smooth surface, so you need a soft padded background to print on. But that's one way of doing it. That's not what we're doing today. This is another one of those. I've used these a lot. This is old. So you can get these really fine, thin texture lines with this when you're carving, pushing the material out, which is quite nice. If you wanted to print on paper to make a real clear print, you probably want to use linoleum. Here, even to make these holes, you have special tools, carving tools you can use. I can show you some right now. These are some carving tools. They have different ends, V's, and kind of scooped edges for scooping the material out. So this is a difficult way. The other thing I want to talk about is the backing. I've glued these to wood. Trying to think of the name of this wood. Anyway, you can glue them to wood. You can make a handle. This one has a handle nailed into it. The one thing I find about handles, it's nice to have a handle, but they take up more space when you're storing them. I kind of like them to be flat. So that's the difficult way. There are other materials you can use that are kind of medium. One is eraser, rubber, basically. Sorry, my rubber stamps are quite tiny. These were carved out of, this was probably a regular eraser. Yeah, it's a children's eraser. This is so old. But here's another, this was thicker eraser. Here's another way you can do a handle. If it's a small thing, just glue a cork to it. You can buy the rubber specifically for block printing from artist supply places. This is nice thick rubber, so really, it doesn't have to be too thick because you don't need a deep line to, I would call it, resist. When you're drawing the line, when you put the ink on the block, you have to have a very flat surface. The only surface that's going to print is that top surface. Anything that digs in under that is not going to print. So you don't need a deep gouge in the material. Okay, so what we're going to use today is craft foam. You've probably all seen craft foam. It's in every craft store, dollar store. It's inexpensive, it's everywhere. I've never seen any thick foam. It always comes about 1/8 of an inch, as far as I know. But 1/8 of an inch is enough. So this one I've mounted on wood. And look at that, I've used both sides. This is an old linoleum print I have, and I do still use this. And I've made use of the other side by doing a design in craft foam. Now this I would have cut out of the craft foam with scissors. It cuts like butter, it's really easy. I would have cut the shape out, glued it on, and then done the textures once it was on here. So that's one way you can use the craft foam. Another way is that you can glue the whole piece of craft foam onto the backing. In this case, I used MDF square that I got at a craft store probably. And I glued the whole flat piece on and then carved out the pieces with a knife. I am going to show you how to do this. I'm just showing you the different types of things and what it's used for so you'll understand what we're doing today. This is what we're going to make today. And this is a simple foam stamp, but it's also just on a foam core back. You can get big sheets of foam core in the art store, Michael's craft store, stores like Staples, even Walmart or dollar stores sometimes have craft foam, although they're a bit cheaper. So this is what we're going to do today. One layer of foam core backing and craft foam on top. For this one, we're going to glue the whole thing on and then carve it out. Okay, now to materials you'll need. Pretty simple materials. If you do a lot of crafts, you'll probably have most of them. You need some foam core. Now these obviously come in bigger sheets, but I'm just showing you what you need. You want the size that you want your design to be. You want enough foam core to be your design. So you might have a little piece hanging around. That's all you need. So the foam core, a piece of craft foam. It's about 1/8 of an inch. That's what that is. Some glue. I use this quick dry Lepage wood glue. Probably just white glue would be okay. The quick dry is kind of handy because when you're gluing your foam to your foam core and you're anxious to get started, it dries quickly. That's all. But also I have found that this seems very waterproof because you have to rinse your blocks off in between colors, and it's been pretty good as far as, you know, the piece is not falling off. So I keep using this because it works. But I'm sure Lepage white glue would work too. So you need a knife for cutting. I use these big Olfa knives. If you have a little craft knife like this, whoops, I pushed it the wrong way. If you have a little craft knife like that, that's fine too. You need a little brush just to spread the glue over the foam. And you will need a ballpoint pen or a pencil, anything with a rounded edge. You can also use these. Most people wouldn't have this lying around. It's a specific stylus, ball-ended stylus that won't rip the foam but will make a mark. But a ballpoint pen does pretty much the same thing. And also, before you start, you'll probably want to play around on paper and figure out a design. I'm going to do this square design because then I can repeat it easily for fabric printing. So maybe if you want to play around with repeating, then a square design is nice. Or you can make just a design you like. Like, here's more of a picture with daisies. Or as I was showing you before, this fish. Play around, try something simple first. But here, those are the tools you need. Oh, and you will have a lot easier time if you have a cutting board. You can measure with a ruler. You'll need some surface some way to cut your foam core to a square shape. So cutting board, foam core, craft foam, glue, knife, brush, and ballpoint pen. So let's get at it. Okay, here I have my 2 4-inch blocks, one of foam core and one of the craft foam. And I'm using the wood glue. I'm applying it to the foam. You don't have to the foam core. You don't have to apply it to both sides. What you should make sure of is that it's an even coverage. So I'm using a brush to flatten it out and make sure it's a solid coverage over the whole block. You don't want any dry spots or any big globs of glue. So spread it out and then double check. And I think I add a bit more here to make sure I get some glue all the way around the very edge too. You don't want your foam peeling up off the edge. So once I've got that, I go over it again, make sure it's all solid, and you just adhere the foam, press it down. At this point, normally I would put it under a heavy book just to make sure the adhesion is really good. And you could leave it for like 10-15 minutes. If you really want to be sure, you could wait until the glue dries, maybe an hour. This glue I have is fast drying. You can cut it right away, but you have to be careful because the glue's still wet, so it might slide around a bit. Now at this point, any little mark you get on that foam might not print. You need the flat surface to print. So I could even put my fingernail in there, and if I was printing on cotton, that might work as a resist. So just be neat with your cutting out. Now mine's not going to be absolutely centered because I'm not measuring anything. So basically you want to cut out and take off anything you don't want to print. So there's, I'm just cutting. It's going to be very wonky, but sometimes that's cool. I'm doing this inner square, so I'm going to start mid. You know, I would normally think about my design a little more, but I just wanted to choose something I could quickly show you. Now, I may be pressing hard. I don't have to. It's like butter. It's like cutting through butter. Now, because I didn't let that dry, when I push that, it's pulling away a bit. We'll get around that. But so it is better to let it dry for about 20 minutes. I got a couple little marks in there. And now I want to cut this square. I mean, I don't think I even had enough glue on there, but you can always fix that. If a piece comes off, you can just re-glue it. So the pieces I'm taking out are those little pieces. Yeah, I really didn't put quite enough glue on, I think, and I didn't wait for it to dry. But you can see how easy it is. I need to cut that right to the edge. That's right to the edge. And now I have a space around that, starting about, go right over to that corner. This is kind of a design that just works with the square and curves, I guess. I think my knife's a bit dull. It's actually, if you can do it, depending on what your design you're doing, it's actually almost easier to just cut the foam first and glue it on. Depending, but this would have been easier if I had put more glue on and let it dry before I cut it. Here's my little line texture. There we go. That one was clean and easy to do. Sometimes a little bit of layer, if you have let the glue dry, well there, that happened. Sometimes the top layer of the foam core will come off, but that's okay too, doesn't matter. And if you do a block print in lino and you clean them every time, if you were doing multiple production, like doing yardage, I guess you might want to do either the rubber or, you know, if you're doing big yardage with repeats of the same stamp. But for the purposes of just doing a few things and using different stamps and having some fun and being able to make something quickly and create something with it, this is a really good way to do it. So I have to take this out now. Cut right to the edge of that. That layer came off. And it's actually really fun to do something that seems pretty simple, but then when you print it, it takes on a whole new life. And then when you repeat it or add other stamps or overlap and add other colors, or it's, you know, this is a tool, your basic design to play with other colors and patterns, and it's so easy. You can play. Say you played with lots of ideas. You could also use this to play with ideas, and then if you really wanted a more long-lasting stamp, when you've got the one you want, then carve it in the linoleum. Because things that you see as one image, they're going to look different when you repeat them with itself or another thing. You know, so it's nice to actually try it out printing, and then you might want to change something in it. Okay, now that we've got the basic shapes, I'm going to show you how to make some texture. You can use a knife, and I could cut like a channel. I could do that, but I find it easier to use one of these tools. Let's use a pen, because a pen is something you might have around. So I'm going to do an extra, push it in fairly hard. You can go over it again. So it hasn't cut it, but it's made a ridge in it. What other textures? I'm going to put some dots. And believe it or not, that is going to resist. You will see that texture in the print. Sometimes on silk it's hard to get that small texture because on silk the paint spread a lot, but on cotton that will definitely show. I'll show you a piece that I do have a little polka dot print on. And of course you can make them bigger. You could, let's do that. You could do that. So you've got a bigger hole. Don't worry about the ink, that's not going to show. This is the other tool I use. There's slightly different sizes on either end. And you just do the same thing. There, I'll make these bigger than the other ones so we can see the difference. And just so my design's balanced, I'm going to make these ones on the opposite thing also. Whoops, bigger. What other textures could we do? Just more lines. Trying to think of, that's mostly the kind of texture I use, either a line or a dot. You know, any other texture would be more little shapes cut out. I'll just use the pen instead. It's a different. That one is going a little off the edge, so I'm not sure how that's going to print. Just to feel, when I print, that's going to bother me because it won't hit. It probably will print, but there. Tidy that edge up a bit. And if I wanted to trim something, I could just get my scissors. Oops. Okay, and there's another example. This is flipping right up because I didn't wait for the glue to dry. I might not have even had enough glue. Just get the glue out. Now, I know there's purists out there who would just cringe at me doing printing like this. I know that. I'm not unaware of that. I did go to art college. I have a degree in textiles. I've had all the training, but everybody thinks differently about things like this. For me, it's so freeing to do something quick, and then the print is still a print, whether you did it with this or with this. So let's try this on a piece of fabric. Does it change? No. It's weird. But you want to be, this is the middle. So if you're putting the ink on, okay, so I've printed one print and it works great. See how these holes, the little spots we made, even the tiny ones, really come out clearly. So obviously I've used this block quite a few times since I made the previous part of the video, and I really like it. So what I'm using is sort of a screen printing ink. It's a thick, it's like acrylic paint, but it's made specifically for fabric. So it's not, when you're finished, it's not stiff. You can't feel a stiff layer on front of the fabric. It keeps it soft hand, but it prints really well. I'll put more information about inks below in the description. So here we are. I'm applying it with a brush. There is another way, which is more common, with a roller, and I will show you that in a minute. But I like doing this because it doesn't waste any ink. And I don't know, I just prefer, I do both. I do use both. On a larger stamp, a roller is very handy. I just grew, what do I want to say, not comfortable, but I grew accustomed to doing it this way because I used to print, I also print on silk. And with silk, you have to be very careful with putting just a little bit on the silk paint because it spreads into the silk. So I just got used to using a brush. And I'm keeping the brush kind of on a low angle mostly so that the ink doesn't go into the holes and the creases too much. It will still resist, but if you have too much paint on, you'll get kind of blobby lines next to the edges. So try to put it on evenly. And this doesn't dry too fast, so you have a couple minutes to do that. I'm going to print right here because I think that's more in the center of the video, hopefully. With this square block, I can do this, go corner to corner, and I know I can still fit a block in there. It's not exact, but we'll talk about repeats another time. This was loosely cut, so it's not going to be an exact repeat anyway. So you press it down a bit. Oh, I must mention that underneath this, I have a padded surface. You could use an ironing board. You could even just use a layer of felt or something underneath, just something not hard like a table, so that you can press it into the fabric a little bit. There we are, our second print. Okay, so here's quickly how you use the roller to apply the ink. You take some with your brush out of your bottle, spread it on there. You can get these brayers. It's a brayer for printmaking. Any art supply store. Your local one, if you can. If you really can't, then yeah, go online. So I'm getting it evenly on the roller. You don't need a lot. Just keep rolling it so it's covered. And then it's hard for me to hold this block because the handle is loose. But you get the picture. And it is nice. I have found, and I don't know why I'm having a problem with this. Definitely if you're printing on paper, this is how it's done. Sometimes I can see the roller marks on the print. Let's just shift to that and see if that happens. Before I do that though, this is just a piece of glass from an 8x10 photo frame. I've put painter's tape around it so you don't cut yourself. You can also use, this is just the back of you can see you have an old binder. It's, you know, a plastic kind of, any smooth surface like that you can find around, you can use to roll the ink on. I only have both of them here as examples. You don't need both. So push that aside. Go back to my piece of fabric. Okay, so I haven't got my glasses on, but I think I'm pretty evenly covered on this. Must fix my handle or take it off altogether. Let's see how this turns out. And see if there's any difference in the way the texture of the print looks. Now, I wasn't really paying too much attention, but I've got some loss over here where I didn't roll it properly. Otherwise, in some ways, I'm looking at both. Yeah, this one almost looks more even. And I don't see any roller marks, really. So anyway, that's the two ways you can put the ink on, just with a brush or with a roller. If you don't have a roller, and probably everybody has an art brush around, to get started, just use a brush. I haven't talked about cleanup. Cleanup is with warm water for anything you've used, really. It just comes off. The one thing I wanted to talk about mainly is the blocks. Because they're on a paper product, don't ever soak them in water, of course, and they're glued on. What I do is pour a little bit of water over it, use the brush to kind of encourage the paint to come off while it's wet, rinse it once more quickly, and then, it will have gotten quite wet. So take a dry towel. I use these, as an aside, these are bar cloths. They're very absorbent. They're great. I have tons of these around. I use them for wiping up everything. So just give it a nice pat with that to get the excess water off. See, nothing's coming off. That glue, the wood glue, is very good with that. And then just let it dry in the air. That's how you would clean them. And here's our repeat. It doesn't repeat exactly, but I kind of like the slightly off texture it gives the pattern. I've used 2 colors here, but you could have lots of fun with color. And it's so nice that the fabric still has a nice hand. It folds nicely. You can play with it. For more adventures in block printing, check out my Instagram account @SusanCorbinTextiles. Have fun!